Azzi Fudd and Kaitlyn Chen certainly showed up to play tonight, which was a very welcome sight considering both of them had relatively off shooting nights in UConn's most recent game against Creighton on Saturday. So it was great to see both of them both find and look for their shot in tonight's game versus DePaul, and let's talk about it. UConn beat DePaul 84-58. Being a 26-point game, UConn was obviously kind of running away with it, but especially at certain points, it was definitely a tough, frustrating game for UConn. They were only up 6 points after the first quarter, and after that, they were able to pull away. But I felt like the game kind of seesawed between these moments where it felt very slow and things felt stagnant versus other moments where the pace of play picked up, and then sometimes both teams just kind of started playing a little messier. Like there were some forced shots, uncharacteristic turnovers, stuff like that. Nonetheless, like I said, UConn was really able to pull away because of the play of Azzi Fudd and Kaitlyn Chen, who I will talk about first. They each scored 17 points. Azzi shot 4 of 7 from 3, had 4 rebounds, 2 of them offensive, and I think she had 3 of them in like the first 3 minutes. Like for a minute there, she was on pace to get 30 rebounds or something ridiculous, which Azzi has said that it is her goal for the rest of the season to go after more rebounds. So I was like, this works great for her. She also had 5 assists, which ties her career high from the Ole Miss game earlier this season, and 1 steal to go along with that. It was just a great all-around game from her. 2 main things in terms of her offensive game. I really liked seeing the ball in her hands, seeing her driving into the lane, and then if nothing opened up for herself from that, she was dishing the ball to open teammates. Kaitlyn made quite a few of her threes from Azzi driving into the lane and finding her open. Azzi was also able to find her own shot by attacking the rim in that way. There was that one shot that she put up, the ball spinned 360 degrees inside the rim, which was pretty interesting. And second of all, I felt like Azzi's teammates did a really good job of finding her today. Paige does a really good job, especially at the beginning of games, of finding Azzi. Sarah, as per usual, also set some great screens. Azzi went right to the top of the arc and nailed a 3 to start the third quarter. I feel like that play really shows off how well Azzi moves without the ball, and her split-second release, it's just unstoppable. So impressive. And beyond that, Azzi also had another incredible night on defense. She was playing some great help defense on DePaul's leading scorer, Jory Allen. She is just always tracking the ball, getting her hands in passing lanes. Really, really happy to see such a complete performance from Azzi. And like I said, Kaitlyn Chen also had 17 points on 7 of 9 shooting from the field. I thought she was going to have one of the perfect shooting games, and then immediately after the commentator said that, Kaitlyn Chen missed her next shot, so we jinxed it. And I mean, Kaitlyn was perfect from beyond the arc. One major positive I take from this recent stretch of games from Kaitlyn Chen is just her continued willingness to shoot the ball. There was a pretty decent stretch of the season where she really wasn't shooting the ball at all, and I feel like that's far behind us at this point, which is a really welcome sign. But beyond that, similar to Azzi, I've really enjoyed seeing Kaitlyn get more comfortable off the dribble and driving into the lane and creating her shot that way. She seems to be actively looking for gaps and opportunities there, and the difference from a month ago is that a month ago she was driving solely for the purpose of kicking the ball out to a teammate, but now she's driving for the intention of creating her own shot, making use of the screens that her teammates are setting for her. So in the first quarter, I think Jana set her a screen, Kaitlyn drove left, finished with her left hand. It was a really nice play. Stuff like that you just really like to see. I really do believe that Kaitlyn Chen is going to become a consistent double-figure scorer for this team. I just think it's necessary for their success going forward, so it's great to see that she's picking up this momentum at just the right time. Every player takeaway from here on out is probably going to be relatively quick because Kaitlyn and Azzi were really the only 2 Huskies to get going on offense. It's unusual to have an off night, quote unquote, from both Paige Bueckers and Sarah Strong. Granted, Sarah did play well. She had 11 points and was UConn's 3rd leading scorer tonight. She pulled down a team high 8 rebounds as well. And that one play where she tipped the offensive rebound to a DePaul player, stole it back, and put up this backwards scoop shot over her head to get the basket was really neat. Paige unfortunately just had an uncharacteristic off night. She shot 2 of 10 from the field and had 3 turnovers to go along with that, which again is just really uncharacteristic. There's definitely a level of production and efficiency that we're accustomed to seeing from Sarah and Paige, which is good because we know what they're capable of. And I do think there's a positive takeaway that even in a night where both Paige and Sarah weren't on offensively, UConn won by 26 points and they got some good involvement from different players. Also, I would watch 40 straight minutes of just Paige's over the top passes to Sarah. Sarah positions herself so well, and Paige does a really good job of finding her and giving her the ball in just the right spot. I think that is just beautiful basketball, and I would watch 40 straight minutes of it. Now moving on to Aubrey Griffin, she entered the game relatively early. I think it was the second quarter, it might have been the first, and she played 17 minutes, which is pretty substantial. I was so glad to see that from her. It's really nice to have her back, particularly because no one goes after rebounds quite like she does. Every time there is an opportunity for an offensive rebound, you can count on Aubrey to be there, to get a hand on it. There were quite a few instances where she tipped the ball and won't get credited for the offensive rebound, but she was creating second and even third chances for the Huskies, and that is just so valuable. This DePaul team is leading the Big East Conference in offensive rebounding, and of course that has pretty much been a concern for this UConn team this entire season. So I was actually really pleased to see that UConn out-rebounded DePaul in this game 37-34 and then 13-12 in offensive rebounds. If my memory serves me correct, which I could totally be forgetting a recent game, but I think UConn haven't gotten out-rebounded by a Big East team in at least a few weeks, which earlier on in Big East play was not the case. They were pretty much 50-50. So again, if my memory serves me correct, it's nice to see that they're being proactive on that front, and it hasn't happened in a while. Back to Aubrey, she finished today with 2 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal, a little bit of everything. And again, even more value is added to Aubrey's game from everything that doesn't show up in the stat sheet. So her energy, her tenacity, her defense, her screen setting, I could go on. I'm looking forward to it and was really glad to see that she played some pretty hefty minutes today. Also, shout out to Jana Al-Alfi for nailing her first 3 of her college career. It was very cool to see, especially because that was a facet of her game that we had seen in international play but hadn't seen at UConn yet. I would love to see the threes keep coming from her. She also did play 20 minutes tonight, which is that benchmark that I would like to see her sit at or exceed for the rest of the season. I think getting her those minutes, getting her those reps matters so much for her development. So I was pleased that she got to play a significant amount of minutes today, more so in the second half, but I will still take it. Also, on the topic of minutes, I was surprised to see that Morgan Shelley did not get into the game until the third quarter, considering she, for the last couple of games, has been first off the bench with KK. This might be nothing. It might have just been a one-game decision from Gino to play Morgan a little bit later in the game, but it's definitely something that I'm following in this later part of the season. Next, I do want to talk about KK Arnold and Ashlyn Shade, who had their usual pretty steady offensive production and who are also just menaces on the defensive side of the ball. It is so much fun to watch. Like, they are just so pesky on defense, and when they work together to try and get a steal, it's just twice as much. KK had 8 points, 3 rebounds, an assist, and 2 steals. I really liked that in the second quarter when she was in a lineup with Azzi, Ashlyn, Sarah, and Aubrey, where she's kind of on the younger side of that lineup, she was still the one talking in the huddle. She is really just developing into such a great leader. I'm just very high on her and what she brings to this team. Ashlyn also had 8 points and 3 steals, all of which came in the first half. Ashlyn, of course, had that steal that KK kind of assisted on and then got a layup to end the second quarter. And then to end the third quarter, there was that play where as the clock was winding down, it seemed like Ashlyn thought that Ice would set a screen for her, and then she didn't, and Ashlyn, because she was running out of time, did a hook shot from just inside the 3-point line, and somehow it went in. It didn't count because she didn't shoot it in time, but what a shot. Gino did not look that amused, and Ashlyn didn't even look that excited because she knew that the play had been messed up. But still, as I said, what a shot. Finally, again, Ice Brady has been on this streak of positive performances. For a lot of tonight, she was the one tasked with guarding Jory Allen, DePaul's leading scorer, and I thought she seemed to do a pretty good job. She was definitely working hard in the paint as Allen was posting her up. There was also a play where Morgan Shelley dribbled into the lane and then picked up her dribble, and when she was on her pivot foot kind of searching for someone, Ice slipped behind Morgan's defender and Morgan was able to pass it to her for an easy layup. I just thought that was a really smart play, good knowledge of where to position yourself, and those are pretty much all of my player takeaways. Overall, I felt like this game was pretty mixed. Again, like I said, I think it's promising that even in a night where Sarah Strong and Paige Beckers weren't scoring a ton, UConn still managed to pull out an almost 30-point, very convincing win. But there also were, of course, a couple areas for growth for this UConn team that were highlighted in this game. One thing about their shooting splits, I don't really love that UConn seems to either shoot 50-60% from 3 or 20% from 3. Today was the former. They shot 55% from 3, and then of course last game versus Creighton, they shot 20% from 3, and I feel like that's kind of been a pattern of theirs throughout conference play. It's not even the level of inconsistency that bothers me, more so than I would just like to see them have an average shooting day. I don't like extremes, so there's that. I also did not love that DePaul ended the first half shooting 50% from 3. Specifically in that first quarter, I felt like UConn was giving DePaul a lot of wide open shots, or at least more room than they should have been. Some things were well defended, and DePaul was just making some tough shots early on, but for others, perimeter defense has been a concern for this team for practically the entire season, and DePaul ended the the game shooting 41% from three, but the issue there is that they usually shoot 29%, and that 12-point differential is something that we've seen with UConn and quite a few teams this season. They did, however, keep DePaul's leading scorer, Jory Allen, in check to some extent. She usually scores 20 points per game, and she had 19 tonight, so right at her average. And this team usually scores about 65 points per game, and they only scored 60 tonight. So statistically, UConn's defense was above average, but I would like to see the differential there be bigger than what it is. Finally, my last point and my last area for growth with this UConn team is their lineups. At this point in the season, in late January, I think they're a little bit too varied, and this gets into depth being both a luxury and a curse. I don't love that there are so many lineups played throughout the game that the main lineups don't really get a ton of minutes together. I think that's unideal for development and cohesion. I think the lineups also kind of change a little bit too quickly. Again, I just think they need a little bit more time to gel and adjust and figure things out. And then my last point is that some of the lineups that are put in, I just think will never play together again, usually because they're not balanced in some way. Like the lineup doesn't have enough scores or the lineup is too small. Again, I really do see the merits of having variety in lineups and testing a lot of different things, but with the January slate of games being over, I was just expecting there to be more consistency in the lineups by now. I do think it's important that relatively soon the rotation is pared down, lineups are optimized, and there are more clear expectations for the bench and also for the starters of what lineups they will most often feature in and what their roles will be in those lineups, because it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. And that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching as always, and let me know what your thoughts and takeaways were. And that's what happened with the Huskies today. Till next time.